updates. Thank you, Stacy. As I was saying, really appreciate your participation and your interest in these. I'm hoping that you will find some good things to see today. So, and the PowerPoint link is in the chat. So hopefully, if you wish, there are links that you might be able to access off of this presentation. So we shall begin. All right, agenda, we're going to talk about one thing around accountability, and it's basically proficiency, how we're determining proficiency for accountability's sake, which test administration shall do that. Some need to know things. Coming back around to text-to-speech, I used a term last time that was incorrect, and so I need to try my best to get the information right for you folks, and I deeply apologize for this. Talking a little bit around roles and responsibilities. I have some information from the ACT folks. Good old Iris, thank you very much for being on the call. You'll respond to that information. Just some 3 main points I want to make around test administration, the monitoring visits, things that we're going to be looking for, a couple of resources that we want to share with you, and then some reminders. All right. So first up, I think I've talked with you folks about this before, and if I haven't, here it is. And so when NDE changed the test design for NSCAS growth in response to concerns or confidence in the spring 2022 RIT score, that was the first operational NSCAS growth test that we had. And there were concerns that came mostly around the RIT, but also because if you recall, that test only had the diagnostic items 1 grade above, 1 grade below. The NSCAS growth test design changed. We made the determination to go 2 grades above, and then for instance, for 7th and 8th graders, that meant that they were going to get high school level standards or question items. And then we removed the floor. So basically, a student could go as low as they needed to go to get the items that were going to help diagnose or come up with a RIT score. Because we changed that test design to make that change in the diagnostic, in the growth RIT score, the NSCAS growth test design no longer can guarantee that students are going to receive the necessary items on grade level to meet the content blueprint. And for that reason, and because the spring test administration is the only one that we will guarantee access to all the items that are necessary to determine proficiency to create that scale score. Accountability or proficiency will be determined from the spring test administration. We had originally, even at the point where Jeremy presented at admin days, we were still expecting to make that claim that we could utilize the proficiency score from the fall or the winter for those students that took that NSCAS growth test. We would still be able to utilize that score or the highest score. I know that that was language, but I believe he still continued to say as long as the student met the blueprint. There have been some other conversations around peer review and what they expect the terminology that's used for peer review is summative. So does that mean only at the end of the year, or does that mean by the end of the year? So there are continued questions around that. At this point in time, we can only stipulate that proficiency because we are guaranteeing access to the blueprint, to the on-grade level content items in the spring. Accountability proficiency will be determined from this score. If a student cannot test in the spring, we will have further conversations. But for now, please understand that this is the reason why we have moved away from the highest score language that you used to hear around NSCAS growth. Okay.
Trudy, can I ask a question?
Certainly, Dr. Dahl.
Just maybe you don't know, this might need to be deferred, but I'm curious of students that are proficient or advanced. I'm just curious on winter, what percentage of students that reached either of those two target levels did not meet the blueprint? And again, not asking for a calculation right now necessarily, but I just, a part of me just wonders, is that 25%, 50, 75? None of them met the blueprint?
We don't have that data yet. I can certainly ask for it, but we don't have that data.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
You bet. Okay, here we go. The changes were made for fall and winter to obtain a more accurate RIT. Does that mean that the spring test will not have? No. The RIT score will continue to, or the growth will continue to be above at least 2 grades and below as low as it needs to go. It just means that the students will definitely be given the on grade level items necessary to create that proficiency score. So they will still have that flexibility. It just means that we are guaranteeing 100% that each student will have those items on grade level first. Okay. Oh, criminy. Okay. All right, need to know. If you've been noticing, and I believe this appeared in our DAC Facts newsletter, the NWEA test platform names have, at least the name for NSCAS growth has changed. So NSCAS growth platform is now referred to as Acacia. So you will see us moving forward using that term. So hopefully that doesn't cause some confusion. The MAP growth platform remains CAP, Comprehensive Assessment Platform. But there will be more information around Acacia system because I believe they're going to refer to it as Acacia reports. And then I think there's another designation using Acacia. So just so you know that when you see Acacia in terms of NSCAS or specifically around NSCAS growth, that it refers to this platform, this product. And another need to know, I believe this too was released to you. While testing the newly released operating systems, NWEA found that the secure browser does not open using Mac operating system 13. The issue's been corrected by upgrading the version of the submodule, which resulted in a new version of Mac operating system secure browser. So you've seen this, hopefully. If you haven't, this is information for you to use. There was a download as of March 10th available for partners. No action is required for devices using Mac OS 12 and below iPad, Windows, or Chromebook operating system. So the current versions of the secure browser can be used for testing are listed here. So hopefully you received that information and you were able to act on it. Text to speech. Oh my gosh, here we go again. So text to speech for NSCAS growth. Text to speech is available in English and Spanish. That remains absolutely true. This is where I use the incorrect verbiage. Text to speech is a designated feature, and you'll find this in the accessibility manual. The designated support for text-to-speech for math and science is only for those students who are not on an IEP or 504. Text-to-speech should only be used on rare case-by-case circumstances where the student is receiving this accommodation in daily instruction. If a student is on an IEP or 504, text-to-speech must be marked as an accommodation in Acacia. And continuing on with this, text-to-speech for ELA does need to be on an IEP or 504 or for a current EL student. Text-to-speech will not read the reading passages. There are instances on the test that a passage is associated with a writing standard. This is the only time where text-to-speech can and will read a passage for the standard, but it absolutely will not be read for any reading passages that measure comprehension. And for reference, please look on pages 930 and then from 49 to 52 in the NSCAS Accessibility Manual for guidance specifically around text-to-speech. Okay, and here we go. Is text-to-speech Spanish only available for tests with Spanish print? Team, does anybody know? Okay, I'm going to have to take this back, Montessa, and I will make sure I get the answer out to the DACs.
Yeah, are you asking if it's an English test, will it read Spanish?
Yes.
No, whatever language, the whole test is in that same language. There's no
Okay.
crossover.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, okay. And is it possible to ensure the blueprint on the fall and winter tests so we can still have the through-year assessment, or are we giving up on that? That is, yeah, that is an ongoing conversation with NWEA. I am having conversations around that. The adding further constraints will add some concerns around the growth piece. That's just going to be, Mike, a question that we'll need to have further conversations with NWEA. I can't answer that right now, but that decision will be made sooner rather than later, so you folks can make your decisions about how to proceed. Okay.
Can I ask a question about text-to-speech?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm looking in the system right now and I'm trying to understand what you're saying. It's actually one slide back where you're talking about the designated supports versus accommodations.
Yep.
It looks like there's only one place to mark it under embedded accommodations in the accessibility part. And so I don't really understand what you're saying about a student. Like, there could be a student, from my perspective, who has an IEP that maybe that's not marked as an accommodation, but they use it regularly in the classroom potentially. So is there some, I mean, like, for example, if they're an English learner, we have students who are dual identified. Is there some way that we have to indicate that differently? And why are the rules different for a student on an IEP versus everybody else? I'm just confused.
If a
Let's see if I
student is,
can-
okay, go ahead.
Do you want me to try, Trudy?
Sure.
So definitely if a student is on an IEP, a 504, or those English language learners that are using text-to-speech for anything, it is an accommodation. This designated feature is only for those students who are using text-to-speech during instruction for math and science and are not on IEP or 504s, which there is additional information on 205 in the accessibility manual. So they can have text-to-speech and not be on an IEP or a 504. Does that help, Bethany?
I'm not sure it does. I guess I don't understand why we have a higher standard for students on IEPs than we do everybody else. I mean, if it's a universal support or whatever.
It's not a universal support. It's a designated support.
Okay, a designated support, though, as I understand it, is something any student can have as long as they use it regularly in the classroom, right? Is that definition correct?
Right now, it's only available for math and science. It's not available for ELA,
Right,
as we have it set up for our assessment.
right.
But
I
they have to meet
understand,
the
but
guidelines, they have to meet the criteria that is in Tool 5 as far as being able to use this designated feature.
that is, say that again, they have to meet the criteria where?
In Tool 5, there's information in the accessibility manual that talks about criteria and determining whether or not a student would qualify for this designated feature.
Okay, I mean, I'm just gonna tell schools that if they have an IEP, they need to put it in if they're using it. But it feels like we're having a higher standard for students on IEPs than we are other students if there are additional criteria for students with IEPs.
No, there isn't for IEPs. This is the additional criteria is just for these on using it as a designated feature. Nothing's changed for a student on IEP who gets text to speech.
Does that answer your question?
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So if we have a student who needs text to speech as a designation, they do not have an IEP for 504 or 504 for either math or science.
Mhm.
It's in the accommodations or the accessibility manual, and it tells us how to get them that feature. And
How
it's
how they qualify for it, yeah.
but we have to mark it in the system. The only way to get them text to speech is in the accessibility supports.
Yes,
Okay, all right. I was understanding that we were supposed to assign it in a different way. We assign it in the same way,
yes.
recognizing that they may not also have IEP or 504 designated.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Okay, so this is the language, part of the language that you'll find on page 30 that refers to Tool 5 and the information that we just shared. Okay, roles and responsibilities. For the spring test administration, school assessment coordinators will have the same access to operational reports as the district assessment coordinator. Whoop. The student file that's going up contains these data elements, and these will be, I'm sorry, the following data elements will be overridden by next week's state file. If the districts have entered this information on student records that match up on the upload, these are the things that are going to take precedence from the student file that Maggie will upload. Is that correct, Maggie? Did I say that right?
Well, we've already provided the state file to NWEA, and NWEA will actually do the upload itself.
Okay, got it.
And I'm ready for questions.
Okay, good.
I know someone will have one.
Can you remind me when the file was pulled, Maggie?
It was pulled yesterday.
Thank you.
Yesterday around noonish. Okay.
All right, thank
What
you.
happens if a student changes status between now and the end of the testing window?
You mean like the IEP or?
Like
The
maybe their
district-
IEP is in process and it wasn't,
Mhm.
like sometimes they
Okay.
don't report correctly when they're open or whatever. if they're-
Okay.
Yeah.
So the IEP data element within the testing system does not have to be coded in order to add accommodations.
Okay.
So accommodations can be added to anybody's record, any student's record, with or without IEP and 504 information in the same system. So it's not going to prevent the student from receiving accommodations or anything like that. Basically, what we're doing is just trying to provide this data for you on, just because it can't be uploaded through CAP. So these are the missing fields through CAP that we can't upload into Acacia. And so we're just trying, to add this information on behalf of the districts. Now, if anything changes, your districts can go ahead and change that, in Acacia if you want to. Ultimately, what these fields are used for is reporting at the end. So NDE will be sending another file at the end of testing with any updates. Okay.
Perfect. That's what I really wanted to know.
Sorry.
I should have asked that more clearly, obviously.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Can you tell me who will see these fields?
Trudy, is that your next slide?
Possibly. Nope.
Okay. Do you have will we be addressing the FRL, Trudy?
The FRL is,
Or you want me to address it now?
go ahead, yeah.
Okay. So the economic disadvantage field will be blank. It is blank in the state file. This will be overridden for any districts who have entered economic disadvantage information into Acacia. The reason we are leaving it blank is because we will, NWEA will be changing access to the operational reports so that school assessment coordinators will now have access to the operational reports. The reason they didn't have this is because of the economic disadvantage field. So if any district uploads economic disadvantage information, your school assessment coordinators will see that data in the operational reports. Did I make sense to everybody?
Yeah, this is what this was supposed to say. So thank you,
Okay.
Maggie, for expanding on it. Yes.
Do you know when that'll be available? I am very excited about this change, Maggie. Very excited.
It's for the
Me
spring
too.
test administration. I don't know for sure when it's going to kick in, but it's for the spring test administration.
It will definitely happen before, well, I'm not going to say definitely. I am 98% positive this will go into effect before April 3rd.
Maggie, there's a question about an NTC code in there in the chat, if you would answer that. Yeah, so I was hoping that this would be good news for you guys. Yeah, so the FRL information will not be something that will be a concern, hopefully, at least during the duration of the test window.
Okay.
Okay.
You want me to address Megan's?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Unfortunately, this is not great news. The Acacia system is automatically rostering any 2020, 22, 23 students for each administration. So if you happen to have a student who was rostered for fall and has since left your district and has not been picked up by another district, they have been automatically rostered to the spring. for your district. I have expressed to NWEA that this is going to cause a lot of unnecessary cleanup. They are going to work on the issue, but it will not be fixed for spring 2023. So I am asking districts to add a not tested code of remove, RMV, to all of these records who are no longer enrolled at your district but are appearing on your roster. Once you have completed this, please send me an email and let me know how many records you had to change, because I would like to report this number to NWEA so that they know how many records were unnecessarily touched. Does that make sense? If the districts don't do it, I'm going to have to do it in post-test cleanup. NWA will not be.
Is there any way NWA can help us figure out who these kids are without us having to ask every school?
Oh, I
Because
don't
I'd
know.
love to be able to upload a file to fix it.
Well, would be like the registration report. When
Right,
you add
that's the file I
NTC
would-
codes.
Yeah, I could pull up I can pull down the registration report and upload, but what I need to know is who are the kids I need to fix without having to
Okay,
ask every school.
Bethany, we ran the registration report. And
Mhm.
then I looked at the groups because our groups come over, and all of these students did not have any groups that they were associated with. So
Okay,
that's how
can
I
try
figured
that.
out who they were.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion. I
oh,
will.
thank you so
yeah.
much.
Absolutely. I just had an epiphany on my drive to work this morning.
Well,
Okay.
and I think we found the error because it's pulling state ID and filling both your local district ID and the state ID with, it's only doing state ID, and then on the other kids, it's doing your district ID and state ID. So we noticed it that way as well.
We
But-
had a bunch of kids that had only state IDs for the district ID who were enrolled, so.
Yeah, well, we found out, I've been working with NWEA, and these are all kids that we don't have a spring term rostered in MAP. But I think that's the situation Maggie's saying, is if they were in there, because that's the whole point of auto rostering, is to not upload all these kids. And I believe NWEA told me we won't have the district ID, but that has been in previous files where you have both your local ID and the state ID. And to us, that's very helpful. So you don't have to mix it again once you download it. And the way they explained in my last help desk ticket, it was that for the kids that are supposed to be rostered, it is doing the double state ID. And so to me, it's backwards.
Yeah, Melissa, I questioned that as well, because I know when we added the local ID, the district ID, that was the whole purpose for doing that, is so that you wouldn't have to go back and forth to try that the local ID and the state ID would be right there next to each other. And people wouldn't have to go back and forth trying to figure out which is, whichever system you're using. So I'll take that back to NWEA.
Yeah, so I noticed a ton of our kids had the state ID for the local ID, but what you're saying, Melissa, is that the ones where the local ID is correct are the ones who are not enrolled, right? That's what you're saying, because that would be consistent with what I had seen. It was only a very small handful who actually had a local ID.
Yeah, I believe those are the students that did not have a spring term rostered in MAP, but at some point, maybe they were in our district. And when I got it back from NWEA, the solution, they were saying that, yeah, it's the kids that are supposed to be in there have the duplicate state ID and that we don't need the district ID, and that we're not worried, it's not going to impact anything. And I sent him back an email that it does impact. We want that other ID in there. I mean, so
I think that was correct last year and now it's
it
not.
was correct.
Yeah.
And it was included, you know, I went back and double.
I agree.
checked. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, I'll appreciate that. Thanks, Maggie. I really appreciate you handling
Hey,
those. Okay, yeah,
If
go ahead.
we move on to ACT, I'm hoping we have time. I have another rostering problem that I'm trying to solve.
Okay.
And Maggie, you're aware of this too. So when students are moving, like either within the district or outside of the district, it's moving their school of, well, really outside of the district's not working at all. But within the district from one school to another, it changes their school of enrollment, but not the test school that they're assigned for each test. So each time a student moves, then we're gonna have to go in by hand and open up their test session and switch the school. And
Mhm.
so first of all, I'm really frustrated by that. And I'm wondering if anybody has any ideas how to handle that. And then the second thing is, I think it's true that students who are transferring from one district to another, it's not working right. Like it was supposed to automatically roster, but it's not moving them. And so my worry is we have a handful of students last year who transferred into LPS and they didn't get updated in the Acacia system or whatever it was last year. And so schools couldn't see them in their status bar and they didn't test them. And then we were held accountable for those students. So what I would like to happen this year is to figure out some way, given the fact that the transfer stuff is not working, that I can help schools who have perhaps finished their testing early in the window and are just using the dashboard to look and see if they have any kids. And they're going to miss these because they're never going to show up on their dashboard because they're not transferring in right. So what do I need to do about that? Because it's pretty clear to me we're responsible for it.
And Bethany, has NWEA sent you any more responses to that ticket
No,
that I asked you to submit? Okay.
I mean, they just said, yeah, this is how it works. And I was like, okay, thanks. That's not
Yeah, that's
helpful.
not, that's not helpful.
Okay.
And so I was kind of thinking through, because really, okay, long-term after, it's probably clear that they're not going to fix it this spring, and that is bad. I don't like that, but I'm also trying to problem solve because I don't want our schools on the hook for kids that they don't realize they're supposed to be testing because the system doesn't give any feedback that that's the case. So what I was thinking maybe could be done is we send out an email to our test coordinators and we ask them to ask their registrars to let them know anytime a new student comes in, because in a larger district, that's not always the same person. And then the test coordinators are going to add those kids to our Google sheet and we'll manually transfer the students. And then because that will fail in some cases and not actually happen, and that is just the way of things. I'm going to try to do an analysis with the registration file in like maybe mid and late April and look for kids that have a different enrollment school and test school and try to figure out who maybe someone has missed. But if anybody has a better idea on how to do that, like you are all really smart, please find another way that it will be less painful than that.
Can I ask a clarifying question? Because as far as I understood, to make the transferring work, it requires that the original school release the student and then they show up. Is that not correct?
In theory, yes,
That's true,
that's
but
how
the
it's
student
supposed to
was
work.
in fact, unrostered
Okay.
this was actually a kid who transferred out of LPS. So we could see they were not in our map
Uh-huh.
and they were only in the Acacia side.
Mhm.
And the district had put them in their map and it didn't move.
Okay, all right, got it.
Okay. I'll
Okay,
follow up with NWE, Bethany, but I don't know if
Yeah.
any of the other districts want to pipe in and see if they have any better solutions than what you already have in place, your plan that you have in place.
yeah, huh.
Yeah.
This will definitely be,
And this,
something that's communicated very clearly.
And I'm worried
Something's-
about kids coming from outside, but I'm also worried about kids inside LPS. Because if, for example, a student moves from, let's say Elliott is doing their testing the first few weeks of April, and Saratoga doesn't start until mid-April and they're still testing. And so if a kid comes from Saratoga to Elliott, and they haven't completed, say, 1 or 2 tests, then it's going to move their enrollment to Elliott, but it's not going to show on the status page because their test school will not update. And so they'll be done. They won't be looking. It'll be an LPS kid the whole time, but they might not see that the student hasn't tested because they're not showing up on the not tested tab for them. And so it's a problem with incoming kids, but I'm afraid it's a problem with transferring kids too.
Well, I think for your internal transfers, at least the student will be showing up at the previous school. So if they see that the student hasn't completed his testing, then they could reach out to the,
Yeah,
need to
and
go
we
in-
can ask them to do that, but I'll be honest with you, they're gonna look and see, that's not our kid anymore, not my problem. I mean, that's what's gonna happen in some cases. And it's not that they're, they don't care. It's just there's so many things they have to keep track of and so many rules that they have to follow that
Sure.
somebody's gonna miss that they're responsible for letting the new school know.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
And
Okay.
I realize this is a problem probably mostly for really large districts, because if you've got 2 schools, then communicating between 2 schools is not nearly as challenging. But with 40 elementary schools, it's harder.
Okay.
And everybody's doing their best.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to disparage any of the
No,
people
no.
who work here.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
I understand, Bethany.
Yeah.
We'll push it with NWEA
Yeah.
from our side.
Yep.
I wish I had a better solution for you at this time.
I wish we did too.
Please,
right.
can they get it fixed for next year?
Yeah. Okay,
Because these are the same problems we had last spring.
yeah,
Well, see, and I thought I thought they fixed it last year for spring. I thought we were able to get it fixed in towards the middle of the test window. But they say it's not the same glitch. I explained that to them and they said it's not the same thing that's happening. So they're still looking into it. I know that, but just not as fast as we would like to see it happen.
it'll be at the top of our list. Things to discuss, okay? Thank you for sharing that and what you are doing to help mitigate it, but we welcome any solutions in the meantime. Okay, any other questions before we move on to ACT? Yep. Okay, Iris.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Happy Friday.
Oh, shoot.
Just getting ahead of me. Okay, so I have to apologize. I messed up this week. So if I spoke to you about a student who had a prohibitive behavior that they could retest, I was misinformed. So please let that student know they are not going to be able to test again in another window. We will be able to do that starting spring of 2024, but that is not available at this time. So my apologies to, and I can't remember everyone I said it to, so that's why I'm making the general announcement. And then the other thing that we learned this week was that if you're using a USB for those triple time accommodated students, you need to fill out an irregularity report. And that is simply so that they know that you use the USB. They're trying to track how many students are using the USBs. It's not that you're doing anything wrong. You're still allowed to use that. They're moving to an online version or an internet version of the pre-recorded audio. And that happens to be password protected. I think they feel that's a little more secure. And this year, 2023 spring, will be the last time you will get USBs. So if you looked at the DAC email from Tuesday, there's some information and big headline on that, and some information in regards to that online version of the pre-recorded audio. And if you have questions, please let me know about that. Okay.
Iris, actually, I do have a question on that one.
Okay.
I was actually at the high school and we were packing up all the ACT stuff by the time that email came out. So we did have students use USBs, but we'd already packed things up. So do we send a report all by itself, an irregularity report all by itself, or?
You know, Kim, if you really wanted to, yeah, or you could just call ACT and let them know that you didn't know about it in time. That would work too. I think just so they have record of it. I think that's what they're trying to do. And they'll probably ask you how many students used USBs.
Okay. I'm excited about not having to use the USBs anymore because our students have iPads. So it being on the internet will be great.
Good.
I would say Holdridge is in the same boat. We had already packed up our items. We were done, 100% done.
Yeah, I would go ahead and just call that the 800 number. And if you guys need that, let me know. I could rattle it off right now for you. How about if I do that? It's 800-553-6244, extension 2800. I'll put it in the chat too.
Thank you.
And Iris, the question from Lissa, will this be available for the pre-ACT and ACT 8-9 test?
Meaning
audio?
Yeah, meaning the online version of the pre-recorded audio.
I just probably eventually, but I haven't heard anything for next year yet. So they're moving. There's a lot of things going on with the pre-ACT, and there'll be some changes that we'll find out about it. But I don't think that I think that we'll still use the USB for pre-ACT at least for one more year. I think they're trying to see how well it works, how well we can get the schools to utilize that. I think that's why we're starting with the ACT. So, but at this time, I don't know that that's going to be available at the pre-ACT.
Yeah, it would be nice if they could practice using that before they actually have to do it on the ACT.
Absolutely. I'll make note of that and share that with people above me. Okay. Okay.
I think this was shared previously. Incident reports need to be filed with ACT by following the irregularity section on the online manual. Can you?
Yeah, I can address that. Anything that's out of the ordinary, any interruptions or disruptions of the test, or if there's anything that happens, just prohibitive behaviors or anything like that, that needs to be filled online. It's not something you have to email. There's a session, an area in PA next that you fill that out.
Okay, and then this sort of doubled down on that whole thing.
Yeah. Oh, this is Maggie's. Is this Maggie? Is this your irregularity blog?
Yes, there was a spreadsheet that was shared. Yeah, go ahead, Maggie.
So on Tuesday's email, I sent out we attached a irregularity log. I highly encourage any district who who had to report any irregularities to please use this log. Because while it's, fill it out while it's still fresh in your mind. And then at the end of testing, when you've completed all your NSCAS ACT testing, you can send the log back to me. I'll take a quick look at it. If I have any questions, I will respond back to you. It's best to look at this now because it's really hard to collect this information in July when we do the post-test cleanup. So a few of the districts used this log last year. It worked really good. I think both the districts and especially me, I really appreciated it because I didn't have to bother you in July.
Do you want the irregularity reports for the USB uses also, Maggie?
You can add them if you'd like.
I'm
And
thinking
same
yes,
with
in
the
case.
as also, I
Yeah,
was
just,
saying
well,
yes,
just in
do.
case it has something to do with any misadministrations, then we have note of it.
Yes, okay.
Not that it will, but just in case.
And you're welcome to add any of your students that that you've added a NAT test code to on there as well. I may have some questions on those as well. So if we capture it now and can talk about it, then we won't have to do this in July when there's folks that are on vacation and hard to get a hold of, and it will take a lot longer to get the results that I need. Thank you.
All right. Test materials for the paper ACT on April 4th must be ordered by the end of business day today. Test materials for April 18th can be ordered between April 4th through the 7th. Standard tests are ordered in Pearson Access Next, and accommodation materials need to be ordered by calling ACT accommodations at that number and extension.
I've also had a lot of questions about when are my April 4th test materials coming. They're shipping them out next week. That is Pearson's decision, and I haven't been able to change their mind on that. I'm sending them sooner. So I know some of the larger districts are going to get them very close to test date. And at this point in time, there's nothing that I can do about that. But we're going to send that question up to the supervisors, see if we can get that changed as well. That would be really helpful.
What's the date again, Iris?
For the April 4th test date, materials are going to be starting to ship out next week on Monday.
But if you haven't ordered them yet, they must be done so by the end of today.
Yeah, if you're doing it for paper makeup, you have to order today. Today's the last day. And then if you need makeup, paper makeup for April 18th, order April 4th through the 7th. Any questions on that? Good.
All right. Wait a minute. Chat. Okay. Test administration, just 3 main reminders. Make sure that the proctor is reading student directions word for word exactly as printed in the test manuals. This is something that we look for. If you have had a chance to review that check sheet, you'll see that. It is appropriate to allow students to read. This is not allowed on the ACT, but only for NSCAS growth, or sit quietly while others finish the test. And to maintain standardized testing procedures, please do not play music or have any other addition to the testing environment. That creates a irregularity. All right, Maggie, there's a message for you in the chat. Okay. NSCAS growth spring 1-pager. There is a document, and then it will also be shared in the next DAC facts. Realizing that this is coming right before the spring administration, still hopefully it will provide you with some just one location to access manuals and so forth, so you don't have to click around, and hopefully this will provide you with a little efficiency in your efforts. Resource for schools. This came across. Thank you, Allison, for Denbesti for sharing this. It comes from the National Center for on Educational Outcomes. There's a toolkit that they are putting together for states and also for school districts around communicating about annual state assessment participation for all students. It explains why, identify and describe reasons why all students, including students with disabilities, English learners, and English learners with disabilities should take state tests. This might be a tool that you may be able to use at some point. Thought it would be interesting to share that. Okay. Also contains materials that individual education program teams can use when making state test participation decisions. So again, this is all in that toolkit that came from the National Center. So hopefully there is some value to you from this. All right, reminders. We mentioned this, or I mentioned this in an earlier DAC update. Remember that the achievement level descriptors that appear on the NSCAS growth report in the spring will not be finalized for ELA and math until after the standard setting. So you will see them. The scores will be there, the ALDs will be there, the achievement level descriptor, the developing on track and advanced will be there. That's the wrong term. Those will be there, but they are not finalized until after the standard setting. So we don't anticipate changes, but just so you know, it is a possibility. And also to remind you that ELA growth data has been suppressed on the winter 2023 growth reports for students who took the ELA in the fall and the winter. And when the spring window opens, that growth between fall and spring will be suppressed, but growth between winter and spring will be displayed if you took the fall and the winter test administrations. And provided link to the growth retest guidelines, just as a reminder there as well. And online testing at external programs. This too was information that we shared before. If students are testing online under external programs in Insight, please make sure that you've sent Maggie the student state ID number, home district, and attending external program like today. Okay, this is, I believe, your deadline today. Is that right, Maggie?
Yes, today is the deadline. This is the one and only time that I can make the change.
Okay.
I think I've gotten a lot of responses since yesterday's email. So
okay, excellent.
This is only for alternate students who will be testing under the program, under such as Mosaic and Axtel. If the student is testing under Mosaic, that's what I need to know. Or if the student is testing under Brook Valley South, that's what I need to know.
So if we had a student who moved after this point, we could just send the paper materials and they could use those and then we could enter them back in the district, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and those I don't need to know. You don't have to send those to me.
Okay, so this is for online testing. Okay, and if you have a testing irregularity that you need to report, please make sure that you email those to me, whether it's all NSCAS Growth, ELA Math, NSCAS Science, or NSCAS Alternate. Any irregularity reports, please email those to me. And the reporting form is linked. Okay, so that's the end of the slides. I have another meeting at 1. Are there any questions that we can answer right away? Thank you very much for all the questions that we've had so far. It's been very helpful for us to get this feedback.
Trudy, I'll stay on a little longer if
Okay.
anybody has questions.
That'd be great.
I just had a question, just to clarify. So the not tested code. So for example, I have students who are currently 9th graders, but they're still in our system as 8th graders because they're in the same school. They don't transfer to a new school. So right now I have like 31 8th graders, but half of those are actually 9th graders. So what code would I use for them? Would I use a remove code for them? I mean, because they're still our kids. They're just.
Yes, please use remove, but could you just send me a couple of ID numbers just so that I can look at it and understand exactly what, you know, if they're 9th graders, you know, yeah, I want to look at that a little closer. Thank you.
So the way that they explained it to me is that they can't remove them. They can't remove them because they're still our kids and we would lose their data.
Yeah.
But then also they can't move them forward as 9th graders because the system only goes up through 8th grade.
For
So
Acacia, but
yeah, right.
And Elisa, you don't map growth test these students in 9th grade?
We do.
And so they should
Or not,
be in,
yeah.
so they should be in CAP as 9th graders, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Send me a couple of those.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hey, Maggie, I have a question on new enrollees. I've had 4 kids that I entered in CAP this week. And my understanding was once I attached them to a group, overnight they would show up in Acacia. But that didn't happen with any of those kids. And I had to submit a ticket. Is that accurate?
Yes, and my guess is that they're probably still linked to their previous district. And so that's where this is that mobility issue that we have been having.
All of them were out of state.
Oh,
that doesn't.
Yeah, that's weird. Okay. Yeah, please submit a ticket and CC me on that ticket because I would like to learn what NWA has to say, you know, what the resolution is.
Okay.
That way I learn as well in case it happens to another district.
Maggie, you had given me NWA's number to call about a very similar, 2 of our kids were getting stuck. We got one resolved and NWA did a great job and we're very quick to fix it. I'm small district, so it was quick, but
Good.
They resolve it really quickly.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Maggie, I had a question about if for many of the programs, they want us to just print the tickets, you know, so we're not changing test location. However, when we were obviously trying to get our Rule 18s in, we were doing some testing and there were a couple kids where I did move their testing location and now I can't get them back. If I call you and give you those names, can you move their testing location back?
I will try my best to do that.
Okay, because it seems like I can find the kid under edit. I can still edit his profile, but I can't go into manage anymore and see them to change the test location back to OPS, you know, because we decided that site's not gonna print their tickets. So, okay.
That sounds pretty straightforward, so I should be able to help you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to have to sign off. Thank you so much again for giving us your time and your feedback. So have a great rest of your day, great weekend, and see you again.